Hey everyone, it's Mystery Girl with Missy, and I'm Missy. Welcome back. Guys, I am here with my admin and moderator, Sally, who recommended this area of Staunton, Virginia, as well as the hospital we're going to today. Little did we know that there would be more than one. So I needed some help, and Sally jumped right in and helped me with the research. So thank you so much, Sally. Guys, give her a huge round of applause. I have up my copyright disclaimer, and I also have up my content warning. I need to protect myself. The videos and photos are used for educational purposes, and the information could be traumatizing to some. So guys, slam that subscribe, slam that like, and let's move on.
Welcome, Mystery Crew. This docuseries is a research collaboration between Missy and Sally. We are going to get into the remainder of the history and find out some stories of celebrities and black market babies at the end of this one. This video contains very sensitive and disturbing information and images. If you haven't yet slammed that like button, go ahead and do it now. Show your support for Missy and Sally by helping get this video into the algorithm. Are you ready to go to Virginia?
Well, Mystery Crew, we've definitely been through a lot. We have learned a lot, and Sally and I are still in shock at everything that had gone on at this hospital and the Dejarnette Center. So, in 1960, Western State actually moved to a new facility, and the reasoning was overcrowding. They didn't have enough room. So the address for the new facility is 103 Valley Center Drive in Staunton, Virginia, and it's open 24 hours a day now. If for any reason you need to call them, their phone number is 540-332-8000. I'm going to do this one without the script. I wrote a script, but I'm just going to kind of go through it and explain everything because we just have this little bit of history left. And then in the next video, we're going on to the cemeteries and the paranormal. So, after all the research and writing and, just kind of going through everything, we don't need a script for this one. So, in 1969, 5 of the original campus buildings were actually placed on the National History of Historic Places, and they started moving in 1960. They finished moving to the new facility and vacating the old Western State building in 1969, a little bit into early 1970. So in 1960, the new facility opened, and it was totally vacated by 1970, with 1969, 5 of them being put on the National History of Historic Places. Now, during the move, Dr. Dejarnette was not the superintendent. I was not able to find out who the superintendent was, but Dr. Dejarnette was only superintendent until 1943. Now, when they moved adjacent to the Dejarnette Center, and as you can see, this facility is absolutely gorgeous. Just as the old Western State was, just more modern, I guess you can say. But it doesn't matter how beautiful it is if horrific things are still going on. They still used the tub therapy. They still used straitjackets. There were reports of SA, which is absolutely sickening, both by staff members and other residents. There was outright torture going on in this place, as per patients that I read reviews on, which I do have some of the reviews at the end of this segment. there was discrimination and several escapes throughout the time of Western State, which some escapes are still occurring. And we're going to get into one of those later on in this video. And that one is actually rumored to be a murder. I mean, I just can't get over the fact that when I do the research on these hospitals, I uncover murders. This is the second mental hospital that I am covering that has uncovered murders. In the one with the children, I uncovered a serial murderer, Andre Rand. If you haven't seen those videos, go check them out. They are insane. I mean, he worked at the hospital and then he ended up with his mom in Pilgrim State, which is another hospital that I cover. And he was actually killing, allegedly, mental patients that were not like in the hospital. They were on the street living with their family. Their families were taking care of them. They had Down syndrome. Some had ADHD, autism, and he just felt like they were misfits in society and to their family. And these bodies have never been recovered. And here we are at Western State. There's 7 murders from medication, and we're going to get into additional possible negligence that that led to people dying here at Western State. It's just unbelievable. The conditions at Western State was so bad that the governor, Jay Inslee, fired the hospital CEO, Ron Adler, in 2016. And Dr., like I said, Dejarnette was only the superintendent until 1943. So Ron Adler was the CEO in 2016. So 2016, this is only a few years ago. This shit is still going on. And it's unbelievable to me. After World War II, the amount of patients increased at the old Western State significantly. And they couldn't house everyone. So at the new Western State, when they moved, they built additional buildings to keep the overcrowding to a limit. What you're seeing are some patient reviews. If you want to read them while I'm talking, please go right ahead. So the new site filled in immediately as the old building was emptying. I mean, overcrowding is such a huge thing. At Western State, the inpatient community is adult psychiatric hospital, so you're considered an adult at 18, so I'm imagining from 18 and up, and it's both men and women. And the beliefs in dignity, worth, and uniqueness, as they said, of the individual and their potential to participate in the development of treatment which is respectful and reflective of the choices of consumers and their families is their motto, which, as you can see by these reviews, that is not what's going on there. I mean, when I read these reviews, I was just getting sick. I mean, I've worked in the medical field. I've worked with paraplegic, G-tube, J-tube, nonverbal children. And if somebody even thought of harming these children in any way, I mean, it just wouldn't happen. It would not happen. And I've also worked with Alzheimer's and dementia. There are other ways to address somebody with a mental issue or some form of aggression that they're going through as a patient than harming them. And it just makes me absolutely sick that to this day, this shit is still going on and they haven't shut them down. I honestly don't understand why Western State Hospital, and you'll see some of the additional things throughout this video, to this day. So you're gonna see why I'm saying this hospital should be shut down, put out of business. I mean, how many investigations are they going to do into this hospital? I mean, to this day, those murders are still unsolved, just kind of swept under the carpet. So, Western State, if you're in Virginia, stay away. Do not allow any family members to be admitted into this hospital. Let's go on. So we're going to jump ahead a little bit. We're going to go to 2015. When I was doing the research, there was an article that was called Lessons Never Learned. And reading it, I was absolutely disgusted because when you look at it, you know, I make these videos to call out these hospitals for families that their loved one that didn't have a voice and died was suffering from this type of treatment. So this is why I make these videos on these mental institutions, is to bring light to what patients are enduring while in a mental facility. So I came across this lawsuit, and it was very long, so that's why I'm not including it, but it was very disturbing that in 2015, patients are still dying. Yes, literally dying because of the way that they are being treated by medical staff. There was a patient, her initials were EB, and she was put into Western State Hospital without her consent. I was going to say unwillingly, but without her consent. And pretty much from day one, she was put in seclusion. And not only was she put in seclusion, she was also in restraints. And she was there in the seclusion for 26 days. And at the age of 37, she actually died from a blood clot. And the autopsy report, which you are able to find in the articles, there's numerous articles. The autopsy report came back showing that the blood clot actually is what caused the blood clot, which is what caused her to die, but that wasn't it. She also had brain aneurysm, blunt force trauma to the head. She had multiple injuries, and she was complaining that she was dizzy, she was weak, she couldn't stand up to go to the bathroom, and they actually admitted in this record that they saw her vitals deteriorating as time had gone on. And this woman, unfortunately, passed away. Now, this is 2015, and patients are still being put in restraints, in seclusion, instead of taking the time to find out what is going on. Now, I understand that there are some mental patients that do get violent, okay? I'm not oblivious to that, okay? I understand this very well. I have worked in the field, okay? And I haven't worked with patients with mental illness, but I've worked with Alzheimer's and dementia. And I do know that they can get unruly, they can get aggravated, they can get violent. They can literally get violent. I had gone through a situation like that. And yes, it was scary. But what I did, okay, is sit on the floor within a distance, and I talked the patient down. And when they would start getting angry again, I would say, okay, listen, I'm just going to sit here quiet. I just have to make sure that you are safe and that you are not in any danger of getting hurt. And I did have assistants with me. I had 3 other people who were CNAs and the floor nurse. But this patient communicated very well with me. They were very comfortable talking to me. So I talked them down. And I would just stop talking and give them their space and their time. They would start talking again, and I would answer. But by me giving them the time and basically letting them know the conversation is on your terms. I'm here just to make sure you don't get hurt. After a while, the patient did calm down. We were able to safely get them to their room. We, made sure, do you want a drink? Would you like something to eat? How about some ice cream? You had a rough day. Would you like, your TV on? Is there a different pillow you would like? And they simply just got ready for bed and they went to bed. If you take the time, seclusion restraints may not be necessary. Now, it would have been very easy to come over and, give this patient an injection of something that's going to calm them down. No, we took turns. We took turns to find out who this patient was going to communicate with, and it ended up being me. So I've been in this type of situation. And yes, the patient was very violent at the time, but we took the time to come to his level and see who he would talk to. And eventually he calmed down. I mean, it took time. It took well over an hour, but it was on their terms. We found out what was bothering, and we made sure that, we let him know you're safe. You're surrounded by people who care about you, that are going to take care of you. No one is going to bother you, because they were afraid that somebody was going to hurt them. So if you take the time to talk to them, you can actually find out and give them the chance. Yeah, I'm just here. I'm just here to make sure that you don't get hurt. And I sat there silently. And I probably sat there for a good 15, 20 minutes in pure silence. And eventually they spoke up. So violence from staff members is not necessary. Seclusion is not necessary. I firmly believe this. Like I said, I've never worked in a mental hospital, but violence is not the answer. When somebody dies in seclusion, and they were in seclusion pretty much from the day that she got there, and she dies from a blood clot, from, lethal restraints is what they refer to it as. Guys, that's insane. Now, if you look at Western state records of, how, if you're in the medical industry, that the state comes in and they check everything. They make sure that, everything is clean. You have all the correct, equipment that's needed. All the medication is labeled and not expired. That you don't have any kind of restraints within. I found records 2003 that the hospital was labeled as a danger. 2003, 2013, that the hospital is labeled as a danger because they have lethal restraints. Why haven't they been shut down? Why is Western State still open? That hospital, after having complaints before the 2015 death, that hospital should have been shut down because they were reported previously for using lethal restraints. How many chances do they get? How many people have to die before the hospital is shut down, or they wipe out the whole entire staff? Yes, they, got rid of, they did get rid of one guy. I forgot who he was. I'm sorry. I told you I'm doing this video free, from my brain. But yes, they got rid of the head of the building. And if you read the reviews, this type of shit is still going on. Excuse my mouth. We should be able to bring a family member that might be having mental issues to a place to get help if they need it, without worrying if they're never going to come home because they died there instead of getting treatment.
Hi Mystery Crew, it's Mystery Sister Sally. This series has been full of horrific details and images. I'm going to discuss this section with you to give Missy a break. Before I retired, I was a sheriff for the city of Richmond, Virginia. That's how I knew about Western State Hospital. There were times I had to transport prisoners either from the courthouse, hospitals, jails, and prisons to the Staunton Correction Center, which was Western State Hospital until 1970. The Western State Asylum closed in 1969, then reopened as the Staunton Correctional Center, serving as a medium security penitentiary for men. As time went on, the prison became for men and women, as well as juveniles. If ever there was a place to be haunted, this is it. These beautiful buildings were built in the early 1800s, opening, as Missy said, in 1828. It was believed that the beautiful architecture could cure mental illness. The prison remained open for a few decades. It was during this time that I transferred prisoners here. I have experienced some things that I can't explain here. We will get into that in the next video. However, it is said to be extremely haunted. The prison closed in 2002, and during the time the building was abandoned, visitors reported hearing moans, whispers, and footsteps around the property. In 2005, Virginia State gave the property to Staunton Industrial Authority, and shortly after, the development for luxury condominiums and shops began. It's amazing how the same structure originally built in the 1800s has been used for such a variety of purposes, with some of the original residents still calling it home and making their presence known.
Hey Mystery Crew, it's Missy, and I just want to give a huge shout out to Sally before I continue. Sally, I want to say thank you to you so much for your services as a sheriff for the state of Virginia, Richmond. Thank you so much. I honestly don't know if I would ever be able to transport prisoners. I'd probably be chicken. But then also to experience things at one of the prisons that you're transporting them to, I cannot wait to hear your story in the next video. Thank you again, Sally. So during the research of the prison, I came across an article, and I almost didn't read it because it was kind of small, like what you're looking at now. But then I came across the larger part of it and I read it. And I said, wait a second. A couple of things here in this article sound very familiar. I need to share this with the Mystery Crew. So I'm going to share this with you guys, and we're going to come across a couple of things that are going to start sounding familiar. Now, as I'm reading this, I want you to remember in an earlier video, we discussed murders that happened at Western State Hospital. Now, the prison is at Western State Hospital. It took over in 1970, which is when Western State Hospital closed. This article came out 10 years later, 1980. So this article came out December 26th of 1980, I believe. So let's get into the article, guys. This was written by lead staff writer Meredith Barkley, and it says, complaints of improper medical treatment at Staunton Correctional Center have surfaced, spurred on by allegations that negligence on the part of the prison's medical staff may have contributed to at least one death. Ding, 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 ding. Here we go, guys. Found another death. An affidavit signed by 27 inmates at the center alleges that on November 23rd, Pedro Alonzo Dolan was allowed to die by medical personnel who denied him adequate treatment after he complained of heart problems. Dolan died of a heart attack. The two-page affidavit was presented to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Roanoke with a request for an investigation into the charges. In keeping with policy, U.S. Attorney John Edwards has declined to say what action, if any, his office has taken. The prison superintendent, John Gathright, denied the allegations and said doctors and nurses at the prison would be dealt with sternly if he found such negligence existed. A lot sounding familiar here. They may not, this is from the superintendent, and it's quoted, "They may not give the inmates what they want," he said, explaining that the staff prescribes what is considered proper treatment. He said a number of complaints against the medical staff were being investigated, but declined to say who was conducting the probes. The affidavit further alleges that medical records in Dolan's case and in one other case have been forged, altered, falsified, and wrongly attested to in an attempt to frustrate the application of justice. The document also alleges that negligence led to the September death of another inmate, Otha Taylor. Taylor, however, died at Medical College of Virginia on December 1st of being septic, which is an infection in the bloodstream. And he was in the hospital for 1 month. So he went septic at the prison, was brought to this, I guess it's a hospital, Medical College of Virginia, and 1 month later died due to being septic. As a testimony to the care the state takes of its inmates, Gathright said Wednesday he had just received a $63,912.70 bill from MCV for Taylor's treatment. The bill, however, is solely for MCV's services and does not indicate those provided by the prison's medical staff. So it shows the treatment that was given at the hospital, but does not show anything about what the medical staff at the prison did. So in a 15-page document, another inmate at the center alleges he was denied glasses adequate enough to correct his vision problems. He was denied prompt medical treatment for a tumor located in his sinus cavity and was denied previously prescribed medication for high blood pressure. The blood pressure medication, the document says, was finally restored when the inmate's unchecked condition threatened his life. The document was prepared as a, I think it's right of mandamus. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not really good with pronouncing words. Mandamus to be filed with the Virginia Supreme Court. It has not yet been filed, however, and that was as of December 26, 1980. So, guys, there's another two deaths at the same exact building. Yes, one was a mental hospital, one was a prison, but they were due to medical treatment. And almost a third. I mean, if somebody has high blood pressure and they're not getting their blood pressure medication, I mean, I'm sure a lot of my viewers have high blood pressure. Believe me, I know mine skyrockets sometimes. But being denied your medication for a condition that could literally kill you, I don't know. I mean, these facilities seriously need to be checked into a lot more, and these investigations need to be brought to light. I don't know about you guys, but I found that article very interesting. A lot was very similar to what we've discussed when it was the hospital. And what's crazy is those murders that did happen at the hospital, all these years later, it's now 2024, those murders have yet to have been solved. So, again, something else being swept under the carpet and never further looked into. But before I move on to the next section of this video, I just want to go into a couple of things that I also found interesting. The complex itself, it was built by Thomas Jefferson's personal architect, who was Thomas Blackburn. I found that pretty interesting. When you go back in history, you see all these names come up that, you learned in the history books. But then when you see a little bit of a personal turn to it, it's kind of cool. It's not something that you're going to learn in school. So, yes, the complex for Western State Lunatic Asylum back in 1828, it was built by Thomas Jefferson's personal architect, Thomas Blackburn. And when the hospital itself shut down and they moved permanently in 1970, it was not under the control of Dejarnette. Okay, so Dejarnette was superintendent until 1943. And before we go on, the last thing I want to mention is if you decide to go and stay at the Blackburn Inn, the hotel, all those buildings are now condominiums, but a lot of people still say they hear moans, whispers, footsteps. Some people hear screams. Sally had gone over that, earlier, but so if you go to the hotel and you stay and you're on the grounds, I was able to just find out what buildings were part of the prison. So I just want to let any of my paranormal friends that decide to go to Staunton, Virginia and feel this place out, an idea of what buildings were what, okay? Because, again, knowing the history is very important in communicating with the afterlife. So building 31 of the hospital, it became women's block at the prison. So building number 31 was the women's block. The main block was building 12, and the violent men's ward was building 6. This way you have an idea. I believe the tour guides over there have maps of the buildings. So when you look at the map, you'll be able to say, okay, well, this was building 12 of the hospital, but when it was the prison, it was the main block. Because we got to remember now, not only are those cemeteries with lost souls of the hospital, but also of the prison. So the cemeteries there have a lot of stories to tell. And I definitely would be interested in finding out. So if anybody does go there, please, you gotta leave a message and tell me what you came across. I did have somebody that was going to go. I know I've said this before, but I asked her not to go. After seeing and hearing the dangers of it, I didn't want to be responsible for somebody going and getting hurt. But I do have some footage, which we will get into in the next video. So let's move on. The once Western State Lunatic Asylum that was constructed in 1828 is now a gorgeous, gorgeous hotel, which is called the Blackburn Inn and Conference Center. It is now 196 years later from when this complex of buildings was built. And to look at the buildings and the structure, it's absolutely gorgeous. I am so glad these buildings didn't end up abandoned and fall apart the way that the Dejarnette Center did, because these buildings are beautiful. Now, the other buildings in the complex have become condominiums, so it's become like its own little town area, I guess. So I think it was 2016. I'm sorry, guys, I'm not going by script. I believe it was 2016, the renovation of the hotel started. Now, remember that it was the prison and it was abandoned for a couple of years. So from 2002, when the prison closed, to 2016, it was abandoned and people had gotten in there. And some of the stuff was destroyed, unfortunately. But the renovation actually ended up costing $11 million. And that began in 2016 with the hotel opening its doors. If I remember correctly, it was 2018. Now, the Blackburn Inn is what was previously the administration building for the hospital. And the address there is 301 Greenville Avenue in Staunton, Virginia, 24401. And in case you would be interested in going to spend maybe a couple of nights, a week, in what was once a lunatic asylum, the phone number is 540-712-0601. And this hotel sits on 80 acres of historical grounds. You got to remember that it was made a historical, I believe it, what was it? What year was it? 1969? 1969, which was right before it shut down and the hospital moved to the new facility. So if you look at the Google reviews, they get 4 to 5 stars, which, that's great. And I read the reviews and everybody has really great things to say. But remember that this was constructed by Thomas Jefferson's architect, who was Thomas Blackburn, and I'm assuming that's where the name comes from. It is surrounded by a grassy courtyard, which is absolutely gorgeous, and has it's like what did they call it? A boutique style hotel. And it's in a former hospital. It's a 7-minute walk from Woodrow Wilson's Presidential Library and Museum. So there are things very local for you to go and do. I believe the hotel, if I'm not being wrong on this, I believe that it does have a spa as well. And it does still have the rooftop. Remember that in the beginning when we were talking about Western State Hospital, we were talking about how they made it so absolutely gorgeous, where they had the rooftop walks. Well, they have the rooftop patio out there where you can get views of the mountains and the gorgeous buildings on the 80 acres of land. The pictures that you're looking at, I'm sure, don't do it any justice. I would absolutely love to go and stay here. There are, I believe, a total of 49 or 50 rooms, and it offers 27 different floor plans. So it's pretty cool. And again, this is in the Shenandoah area in Staunton. I'm not too familiar with Virginia, but if you're from the area or if you've been there, that's kind of where it is. It's in the Shenandoah area. And the guests have the freedom to leave the grounds, which the patients never did, guys. And that's, something that thousands of patients that went through the doors of the old Western State Hospital did not have the luxury of doing. They never had the luxury of just going out on their own. And for me to see something so beautiful come out of something so dark, I absolutely love it. And that's why I would really love to go there, because even though I know the place has been renovated, they spent $11 million to renovate it. There is so much dark that happened in the original building that my paranormal friends, those walls are talking, those hallways are talking, those rooms are talking. And even though, like with the Dejarnette Center, it's so dangerous, sanitarium, it's so dangerous to go in there because of, the lead paint and the asbestos and the falling walls and ceilings. Here you have an opportunity to go to a place that was renovated to be a gorgeous hotel. No, it wasn't renovated for the paranormal community, but those walls are still talking. So I would definitely love to go and check this place out. And, guys, this place was introduced to the Historic Hotels of America, the official program of the National Trust for the Historic Preservation. And I would love, if I ever get the opportunity to go to Virginia, you will find Missy staying at the Blackburn Inn. The Frontier Culture Museum is a place located pretty much on the same ground as Dejarnette. And if you decide that you want to go to the Blackburn Inn and stay, so you can check things out, if you're into the paranormal, and you want to check things out as well, and you want to bring your family though, because it's a vacation out of state, there are things there that you can do as a family, and the Frontier Culture Museum is one of those things. It's costumed historical interpreters that show the life and costumes of the Native American tribes in Virginia. The arrival of the German, English, and Irish settlers along the Great Wagon Roads, and the painful journey of the enslaved Africans to the first permanent British colony in North America. Visitors may also interact with a blacksmith at the Irish Forge, woodworkers, tailors, and yarn spinners, and learn how the early settlers of America cooked and worked the land. So you can go and be able to check out the Dejarnette Center, Western State, which is now the Blackburn Inn. If you're into paranormal and you want to maybe go and do an investigation, you can do this during the earlier part of the day with your family, and then maybe kind of wean off a little bit and go and check things out. So yeah, guys, there are things that are local, so you can make this a family trip. And after talking to people there, I did make a couple of phone calls in order to make this video to make sure that I was getting the information correct. And the Frontier Culture Museum is actually the place where I called that explain the difference to me between the Dejarnette and the Peary building for the Dejarnette Sanatorium. So again, I want to really give them a huge thank you for that and taking the time to speak to me. They didn't have to. And I'm really grateful that they did, because until that point, Sally and I were like, wait a second, what is Peary? What is the Peary building for? And we just it really got confusing for a while. So when I called the Frontier Museum, they were more than happy to speak to me, and I truly appreciate that. So there is some things there that you can do to make this a family vacation and enjoy more than just the Western State Lunatic Asylum or the Dejarnette Center. Well, Mystery Crew, I saved the best for last. So as you're all planning your trips to Virginia to go and check out the Western State area and the Dejarnette Center area, which do not go in there because you will get fined or arrested. I did make a phone call to the Ghosts of Staunton to find out a little bit more about what their tours were and why they had to stop doing them. I spoke with Marty Seivell, who you're seeing right here, and what a nice gentleman. Oh my goodness, what a great phone call it was. He was so friendly and so informative. And we kind of talked back and forth, and I actually was telling him places to go check out, and he was telling me about another place to do a documentary on, and it was just a really great conversation. But he told me that when they were able to do the tours over at the Dejarnette Center, which, don't forget, the property is owned by the Frontier Culture Museum. So he used to get permission to go and do a tour, and they were only allowed to do 2-hour tours, but it had to be outside because of safety issues. It's a liability if somebody gets hurt. So they were only allowed to do them outside, and they were only allowed 2-hour tours. When they were told that they were no longer allowed to go there, their final tour had 165 people. And I do remember seeing, and said this to Marty, I said, I remember seeing a video on YouTube when I looked up, the Ghosts of Staunton, and they were standing on the staircase, and there was so many people there. And I'm assuming, and he thinks also that was their last tour. But they were able to go on the grounds and do tours, which is amazing. And it's so sad that because of how much the building has come down, and asbestos and lead paint, that they cannot go in there anymore. And also the vandalism, which caused a lot of the deterioration in the buildings. It's a shame what people did to it, because unfortunately, now they can no longer go there. But he also told me that all of his tour guides are actually criminal investigators, paranormal investigators, and one of them actually wrote a book, which I have at the end of the photo section of this video, and it's called The Fear the Reaper by David Sims. So check that out. It sounds like it's a really interesting book. But he told me that since 1996, when the Dejarnette Center shut down, that there has actually been about 7 offers on the buildings to turn them into something different or knock them down, but because of the costs that nobody has actually gone through with taking over the buildings there. And the Frontier Culture Museum actually had to stop anybody from going there because of how dangerous it got. And Marty had actually told me that the fines used to be about $500 if you went into the building, but now the fine, he's heard, is up to $2,500 if you go in there. So if you have any plans on going in the buildings, trust me, it's not worth it, because it's going to cost you and it's super dangerous. So don't do it. As much as I would love to, and I'm sure all of you would, it's definitely not worth it. He did tell me that the cemeteries, which we haven't gotten into yet, but he did tell me that the cemetery that is behind the Blackburn Inn, that's the original cemetery for Western State. Now, there is signs up there that say do not trespass, but if you ask and it's during the day, sometimes you can get permission. But if you don't have permission, you will be fined. So, I'm really glad that I talked to him and I was able to find that out. He said that, throughout the time that he was there, as a paranormal investigator himself, he's actually really never picked up on much. But when you're going with a big crowd, it's hard to pick up on spirits or communicate. So he said, he would love to go in there, but without the permission, he's not taking any chances himself. So, like I said, they have the tours. I have up their schedule. Check out their websites. You can go to, one of them is ghostsofstanton.com, and the other one is blackraven.com. And if you have any interest in emailing Black Raven Paranormal, I'm sorry. If you have any interest in emailing, you can email him at blackraven61@comcast.net or ghostofstanton@comcast.net. And again, the phone number there is 540-448-2743. He also said to let my viewers know there's another really good book, and it's called The War on the Weak, and it's about eugenics. So that was another recommendation from him if you're interested in finding out more about the eugenics movement in Virginia. Again, the conversation with Marty was absolutely amazing, and I wish that I was able to get on a plane and go and check out the Ghosts of Staunton, but because of my injury, I can't. But I would love to go and check out some of these tours because it sounds so interesting. He told me, stories about other hospitals that they have gone to investigate, and one of them is Penhurst Asylum, which I will be looking up. So he, and I told him about Pilgrim State and Kings Park, and I also told him about Sweet Hollow Road. It's not too many people that actually go there and do a deep investigation, and it would be awesome for me as somebody from Long Island to see a real investigation of Sweet Hollow Road and find out what's really going on down there. It would be really great for me as a Long Islander to see that. So, I really hope that Marty does go down there. But guys, yeah, go, if you do go to Virginia and you check all these places out, please, tell Marty that Mystery Girlfriend Missy sent you, and I hope you have a great time, and you better send some pictures because I want to see them. So I have up some of the schedule, but to get the whole entire schedule for all the tours, again, go on to ghostsofstanton.com and you'll be able to find the tours, purchase tickets. It's actually a great website. The other thing that was interesting that Marty had told me was the underground tunnel. So as far as I had heard about the underground tunnel, Pilgrim State, Kings Park, they all had them, and they used them to transport medical supplies and patients. If it was winter, they went underground and brought the patients from building to building. But as far as I had learned from my research, the underground tunnels, as far as Western State or Dejarnette had gone, was for their heating system. So I'm not really sure 100% on that, but if you guys find out differently, let me know. So if you guys are planning on going to Virginia, drop a comment in the comments below that you're planning on going, because like I said, I am so interested in seeing my viewers' pictures from going, and I would love to go. So let me at least enjoy it through you guys. But again, also check out Black Raven Paranormal. Check out their merch store. They have some great things, guys. So in this section, we're going to get into a couple of different things. This was actually part 7 that I'm adding to this one because it's not too long, and instead of having a very short video, I figured just add it to this one and then we can move on to the paranormal in the next video. So this is from the Archives of the Resources of Virginia. In 1913, there was an escape. May 31st, 1913, was the death of Margaret J.P. Pollard, a patient of Western State Hospital, died after being struck by an eastbound Chesapeake and Ohio passenger train after she escaped from the hospital. No blame was placed on the hospital or railroad, but it was recommended that the grounds of Western State should be fenced or otherwise secured in order to prevent similar situations from occurring again in the future. Now, the next one that we're going to go into, Sally had actually found an article that was in the Washington Post from March 1st, 1994. So when she sent it to me, the both of us are reading it, and we were trying to figure out, was it Western State Hospital from Washington, or was it actually the one from Virginia? Because it was weird that it was in the Washington Post, but it did state that it was Virginia. So this is about Mary J. Lacey, and the article was March 1st of 1994. Mary J. Lacey was 44 years old and a patient at Western State, Virginia. She was discovered on February 21st by another patient in a remote wooded area of the hospital's 300-acre grounds. She had been reported missing from the hospital on January 25th. She was originally from Arlington. She was found hanging from a tree. She used bed sheets to commit apparent S-word, because we're not allowed to say it on YouTube, and her death may have occurred about the same time she went missing, as per the state medical examiner. Mary was issued a pass to leave the hospital grounds on January 25th for a church outing. When she didn't return for dinner, and the hospital staff discovered that she had not even attended the church event, police were notified and the grounds were searched by guards. And that's as per the hospital director, Linwood Harding. So she was given permission to leave to attend a church event. And when she didn't show up for dinner that night, it was looked into, and it was found that she never even got to the church event. So they did the right thing here for the first time, and they called the cops and searched the property. The director, Harding, said that the guards didn't search the entire grounds because hospital officials believed that Mary probably had left the premises. Her body was found 200 yards from the hospital parking lot, and it is surrounded by tall pine trees, they said. Harding said Mary had a form of schizophrenia that did not warrant close supervision. It's a HIPAA violation for them to disclose all of this information in a newspaper article. Normally, I wouldn't even get into it, but being that it's out there in the newspaper that everybody can read, I am getting into it. But they should not have done this article disclosing their full name and everything. Harding also stated since her admission to the hospital in July, she had been given permission to leave the grounds several times and also had a pass to walk freely around the grounds. But an Arlington General District Court judge, in court papers at Mary being committed to the hospital, ruled that she was an imminent danger to herself and to others, and substantially unable to care for herself. So, when she was admitted, it was documented by a court that she was a danger to herself and to others and unable to care for herself. But yet, they repeatedly gave her passes to leave the grounds and to walk freely about the grounds, which again is wrong. So here we go again. Mary Lacey, nicknamed Wildflower by fellow patients at Western State, was admitted to the hospital by Arlington Court at the recommendation of Arlington's County Mental Health Department. Before being committed, she had been in and out of shelters for the homeless, often staying at Bailey's Crossroads shelter in, I can't pronounce this correct, I think it's Annandate. It's Annandate, according to court papers. She had no family other than a father in Maine. Harding also said that the last S word of a patient occurred 4 years ago. So a lot is still going on at Western State, regardless of that they moved or that Dejarnette is gone. They have not changed how they view patients and follow what they're coming in on record as. So patients are still dying. And that's just so heartbreaking to me. So heartbreaking to me. Now, the next section that we're going to get into is from 1997. So this is 1 year after the Dejarnette Center sanatorium. I don't know why I keep calling it center. I'm sorry. 1 year after it closed for good. And this we found in the Civil Rights Division of the U.S. Department of Justice. So we did a lot of deep diving for this series, and we were able to really find a lot. So 1 year after the Dejarnette Center closed, during the investigation and evaluation to ensure Western State patients were receiving care and treatment in accordance with their constitutional and federal statutory rights at Western State Hospital. During the investigation, violations included inadequate mental health treatment, inappropriate use of restraints and seclusion, inadequate nursing and medical care, inadequate protection from harm, and inadequate discharge planning and community service. The report stated a major cause of many of the unlawful conditions they identified stems from an insufficient number of adequately trained professionals and direct care staff, which is the equivalent to a CNA worker. So they were inadequately trained. I'm sorry, I lost my place. So they weren't trained to meet the needs of the patients. The report continued inadequate assessments and planning, inadequate pharmaceutical logging practices, continuing on to say lack of staffing contributes to the lack of adequate treatment. Patients of Western State often remained in restraints and seclusion without any objective regarding criteria for their release or explanation of the problem. Behavior being addressed by the use of restraints on patients has been living in seclusion for years. So they had a patient there that was living in seclusion for many years, guys. This is still so sickening to me. So all these years later, it's still going on. To have a patient that is living in seclusion for years, what the hell? I mean, how is, excuse my French, how is this shit allowed? This is, I mean, it's 1997. We have new medications, we have new treatments, we have come so far in mental health that there are no excuses, because I've had people comment, well, you know, things weren't known then, it was a different time, medical treatment has come so far, there are so many advancements. 1997, we're talking about You take a patient and you put them in seclusion, in restraints for years. After years prior, you had a patient die from being in restraints, from a hemorrhage. I mean, when is Western State going to learn? And how this hospital is still able to be running and treating patients, and it just makes me sick that they have not been shut down. I'm sorry, I'm saying it. That hospital should be shut down. If in 1997 they are still using treatments that were done back in the 1800s and just putting people in restraints so they don't have to deal with them in seclusion, they should be shut down. They should be shut down, and this shit should not be allowed anymore. Excuse my mouth, because I'm just really frustrated, and I'm sorry. It's just sickening, and to have to repeat this in 2024, it's just beyond upsetting. Reading it from the 1800s and, researching it from the 1800s is extremely upsetting, but to still be having to repeat it from an investigation into the hospital in 1997, that's not acceptable. It is not acceptable in any fucking way. Excuse me. Again, I'm sorry. Let me go back to this. So, a patient had been living in seclusion for years. Other patients frequently are placed in restraints in a face-down position. The report continuing to say that during the time of their tour of Western State, they were tying patients in a posy vest restraints. Now, guys, do you remember when we did the treatment section? I did the section of the posy restraints, and those are similar to where a patient is unable to take off their clothing to prevent them from engaging in sexual activity. So the restraints were to the side rails of their beds, and also used of locked jumpsuits. I mean, are we going backwards in 1997? I mean, how are you still denying somebody the right of sexual activity? If they have a mental illness, does not mean that they are not of right sound and mind to engage if they feel like they need to engage in sexual activity. I'm sorry, but that's just how it is. In my opinion, if you are not cut out to work in a facility such as a mental institution, then you need to move on to a different area, maybe a regular hospital, or I don't know, a doctor's office or something. But for you to take on this kind of work, if you can't deal with it, and to continue to do illegal things to patients, because restraints are illegal to use on patients. Okay, so they are not permitted. Then you need to get the hell out and stop abusing patients. These practices do not comport with accepted professional standards, and it's inappropriate substitute for staff observation. Western State, although a different location, it opened originally in 1828, and this report with so many violations was in 1997, which is 169 years later. Western State has been in operation, and it's still violating patients' rights and laws. And that was the end of the article. But throughout reading and researching and writing these scripts, as the years went by, Western State never once learned from any of their mistakes. Instead, they continued to cause harm, and just, in my eyes, I mean, you're putting somebody in seclusion for years? That's human torture. That is human torture, and it is in so many ways not acceptable. Not acceptable. And if you work in the medical field, I am sure you agree with me, because, I mean, I know Shannon, my moderator, she worked in the same field of medical as me. And I was working with patients that were nonverbal. They were paraplegic, G-tube, J-tube, trach, and they would have episodes as well because they would have frustration of, maybe they weren't feeling well and couldn't communicate. And to think that anybody that I worked with would even try to harm one of the individuals that I worked with, oh no. It would never, ever happen. So if you're going to take a job in this kind of field, whether it be mental illness, individuals that have Alzheimer's or dementia, or individuals that are paraplegic, nonverbal, whichever field it may be, even in a hospital setting, okay? If you can't handle it, I'm going to say it, get the fuck out of the field. Before we get into this section, I just want to apologize for my language in the last video. I'm sorry. Throughout this series, it was very hard to repeat a lot of the stuff that was in this series, and just constantly hearing the abuse, and, it just really pisses me off that to this day that it's still happening. So I do apologize for my language. What we're about to get into is kind of interesting, actually very interesting. Sally and I were done with the research, and I just went back in to make sure that we didn't miss anything. And I kept coming across articles, black market babies from Western State Hospital in Virginia. And I'm like, what? There was about 5 of them. And then I'm seeing stolen babies, movie stars, Joan Crawford and Lana Turner. So I had to look into it. I start reading it and researching, and I'm like, this is just total BS. I'm like, I know that, Joan Crawford had adopted her children, and Lana Turner, I thought that she had given birth to her child. Well, I actually had to remake this section of the video because after I said I debunked it, I looked a little further and found out I was wrong. So guys, let's get into this. Joan Crawford, famous movie star. She made so many movies back in the day. I am considered an old soul because I know her movies, and I also know her movie Mommy Dearest. It's not her movie, her daughter Christina, who is one of her adopted daughters, made it. She wrote the book, and then the movie was made. And Lana Turner, I don't really know too well. I've heard of her, but I don't really know her. But let's find out a little bit about them. So Joan Crawford adopted Christina first, who was born June 1st, 1939, in Los Angeles, California. She was born out of wedlock to a teenage mother and father who were in the Navy. Joan adopted Christina in early 1940, just before she was 1 year old. She originally named her Joan Crawford Jr. I never heard of that. That's weird. Naming a child after yourself as a junior, as a woman. But anyway, so then she changed her name to Christina later on. Christina spoke of abuse having Mommy Dearest, the book and movie, made. Christina was left out of Joan's will. Then she adopted a son, and his name was Christopher Crawford. He was born on April of 1941. There was no day available. Joan adopted him June of 1941, and she was absolutely heartbroken when, after raising Christopher as her own, Christopher's biological mother wanted him back in 1942. Christopher was taken away from Joan. Joan had cared for Christopher for almost a full year. Joan and her then husband, Philip Terry, were devastated. The birth mother actually ended up selling Christopher sometime later to another couple for $25,000. Joan Crawford, throughout her life, considered Christopher as one of her adopted children. Joan had mentioned she had adopted 5 children, and Christopher was her first adopted son in 1941. So then there was Joan Crawford's twins, who is Kathy and Cynthia, born January 13th, 1947 in Dyersburg, Tennessee. Their mom died weeks after they were born from kidney failure. Their father, who abandoned them, they actually ended up looking for later in life. Joan adopted them in June 1947 from the Tennessee Children's Home. Remember that name, guys. In 1990, they actually went and looked, and they were able to locate their biological father. So then there was one more adoption, which was Philip Terry Jr., who was born October 15th, 1943, and he was adopted by both Joan Crawford and her then husband Philip Terry in 1943. After Joan divorced Terry, 3 years later in 1946, Joan changed her son's name to Christopher, which was the name of the first son that she had adopted. He was labeled as a problem child, and after he found out that he was adopted, he continuously ran away, trying to find his real mother. Christopher left home before the age of 18, and along with Christina, he was also left out of the will. Now, I want you guys to remember that the twins were actually able to locate their parents, and they were adopted from the Tennessee Children's Home. And this is where I ended up changing my mind and my whole perception on what I had originally put in this video, and after uploading it to YouTube, had to remake, because I found out some crazy information, and we're going to get into that. Now, Joan was not really permitted to adopt children because she was divorced, she was single, she wasn't married. So, you know, I always kind of wondered after watching the movie Mommy Dearest, when the man in the movie walked over and he was holding a baby, and Joan was like, oh my God, almost like she knew nothing about it. So it's kind of interesting to me how all of those years later, I found these articles that kept saying black market babies, and I had truly thought I had debunked it. And oh my God, guys, wait until you hear what's coming up. Okay? Not only about Joan Crawford, but about Lana Turner. Okay? This is the husband that she was married to when she adopted the 5th child. So guys, Lana Turner, I had found out through articles, they all say that she gave birth, except for quite a few, including Wikipedia. Now, her daughter that she adopted, her name was Cheryl Christina Kane, born on July 25th, 1943. And she was actually subject to media attention in 1958 when at 14 years old, she stabbed to death her mother's lover. She was not charged, and his death was deemed a justifiable homicide. So, guys, what do you think? We're about to find out a little bit more about Lana Turner and Joan Crawford. And guys, you're about to be blown away. I guess by my response, I'm kind of giving you the answer here. But guys, get ready. Here's my assistant.
Hollywood is notorious for its many dark histories that get swept under the rug. The story of Georgia Tam, the baby broker, is one of them. She facilitated the adoption of children that were stolen from their biological parents. Many of these children were purchased by Hollywood superstars. Joan Crawford was one of them. adopting her daughters Cindy and Kathy from the infamous baby broker. Georgia Tan once had a good reputation, working at the Tennessee Children's Home Society to expedite the adoptions of numerous babies who had been given up by their parents. Yet it came to light years later that she actually managed the sale of, essentially, black market children. Many of them had been stolen from their parents with the help of Tan's extensive network of accomplices. She regularly took babies from patients at mental hospitals, stole children from the street, and even paid doctors and nurses to give her newborns and tell the parents they had died. Tan would then change their names so that they were hard for biological parents to track down. This was no small operation. Between 1924 and 1950, Tan stole over 5,000 children, 500 of whom died while in her care. Among those who used the Tennessee Children's Home were allegedly celebrities: Mary Pickford, Smiley Burnett, Lana Turner, Pearl S. Buck, and former New York Governor Herbert Lehman. June Allison and her husband also adopted their daughter, Pamela, from the agency. Interestingly, many photos from the time list her as being Powell's daughter from his first marriage, and not an adopted child. Joan Crawford is the most famous celebrity to use Tan's service. She was unable to have children herself. Some say due to too many abortions causing her to have miscarriages. Others say she was too vain, instead turning to adoption to build her family. She didn't want to go through agencies with rigorous restrictions, as they would have turned down her application. Crawford was considered too old, too promiscuous, and she had been divorced. This is exactly how she ended up at the Tennessee Children's Home, as they had no such restrictions, although she had already adopted two children from other agencies. In 1947, she paid Tan for her twins Cindy and Kathy. The other siblings, Christina and Christopher, had been adopted in 1939 and 1943 respectively. Despite many of Tan's children being unable to track down their biological families later in life, Kathy and Cindy were able to. Joan Crawford died of a heart attack in her New York apartment on May 10, 1977. Tan was an American social worker and child trafficker who operated the Tennessee Children's Home Society, an unlicensed adoption agency in Memphis, Tennessee. Tan used the home as a front for her black market baby adoption scheme from the 1920s to 1950. During this time, Tan also arranged for out-of-state private adoptions, which she charged a premium. As many as 80% of these adoptions were to parents in New York and California. Adoptions in states such as Mississippi, Arkansas, and Missouri could be arranged for $750. Records indicate that between 1940 and 1950, the agency placed 3,000 children into states alone, at a time when adoptions in Tennessee cost the princely sum of $7,000. Some adoptions brokered by Tan cost as much as $5,000. While in her care, the children were mistreated by Tan, with reports of neglect, physical abuse, sexual abuse, and murder, with estimates of about 500 deaths due to mistreatment. So are the rumors true that the babies came from Western State Hospital? While Missy and Sally couldn't find the name directly tied to Western State, there are many articles stating the answer is yes. However, even though Missy did find the articles mentioning Western State, she doesn't know how reputable the article authors are. Tan did attend Martha Washington College in Abingdon, Virginia, graduating with a degree in music in 1913. When Dr. Dejarnette and his beliefs in eugenics were at Western State, Missy and Sally said they honestly wouldn't put it past him, especially after seeing she did get some of the babies from mental hospitals. They couldn't find in researching just which hospitals they were.
So there you have it, guys. That is the end of all of the research and the history, because if you're a paranormal investigator, you really need to know the history behind it. You don't want to go to these places not knowing anything, and when you're trying to communicate, you're like, who's there? Can you come forward? Instead, you now know the background, what they suffered, what they went through, and it will be easier to communicate and maybe get a response. Again, you're not allowed in the buildings, but even on the property, souls may come forward and feel comfortable talking to you if they feel like you can sympathize with what they had gone through. Excuse me, I'm tripping over my words. But the next video, guys, we're going to be getting into the cemeteries, and there's 2 of them, and we're also going to be getting into the paranormal. I have many video clips from a friend that sent them from an old investigation, so I will be including that. She also had some of her friends send over their footage, and We just need to remember and continuously pray for anybody suffering from mental health, that if they need to go to a facility, they are not met with any of these treatments. And we need to remember that just like any other illness, that mental health matters. It is so important. So guys, hang with us until the end of the video. We'll chat in the comments for the premiere, and I will see you on the next one.
Thank you for watching. Please remember to hit that notification bell so you don't miss part 7, The Two Cemeteries and the Paranormal, next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also remember to slam that like button. Docuseries credits. Research done by Mystery Sister Sally. Location suggestion. Mystery Sister Sally. Research and script. Mystery Girl with Missy. Video and voice over. Mystery Girl with Missy. Thank you again, and we will see you next week.
Well, Mystery Crew, that's the end of this part. Don't forget to tune in next Wednesday for the conclusion of Virginia's Dark Secrets. We're going to end off with the paranormal. Sally and I both want to thank you all for being here and for your continued support. And remember, every day is a mystery.